some of what we heard and some drawn from other gospel accounts. And he described it thus: the Last Supper with his close friends, one of whom had already sold him 30 pieces of silver, the price paid to redeem a slave. The anguish in the quiet, moonlit olive garden. The false friend coming close to betray him with a kiss. The friend who still believed in him and on whom, as on a rock, he had hoped to build his church, denying him as the cock crowed to the dawn. His utter loneliness, his submission, his acceptance of everything. The high priest rending his garment in anger. Pilate, the magistrate of civil justice, calling for water in the vain hope of cleansing himself of that stain of innocent blood that makes him the scarlet figure of history. The coronation ceremony carried out not with a crown of gold, but the crown of thorns. The crucifixion of the innocent one before the eyes of his mother and of the disciple he loved. The soldiers gambling and throwing dice for his clothes. The terrible death by which he gave the world its most enduring symbol of self-sacrifice and love, the cross. And his final burial in the tomb of a rich man, his body swathed in Egyptian linen with costly spices and perfumes, as though he was a king's son. There are other elements too, of course. As we commemorated at the start of this morning, he was cheered for a moment by the waiting crowds in Jerusalem. And they had been waiting for someone like him. They had wanted their Messiah and King to deliver them from oppression and occupation by the Roman forces. There is tension between what the crowds wanting to do and wanting to be as Messiah, and the way of non-violent, total self-giving that he was called to. A lot of us probably would like a God who swoops in to save us at our every whim, to be on our side in adversity, when people or situations are getting us down. How much more so when the stakes are really high, when a nation is oppressed, when we are feeling really threatened by the other. And for the Jewish people under Roman occupation, the stakes were high. A revolution had been brewing for a century already and would continue to bubble up for decades after Jesus. Violence against the invading Romans was always looming. And the manner of Jesus' entry into Jerusalem is actually a parody of the practices of those conquering forces. You've got the crowds gathered, the palm fronds and the cloaks strewn across the road leading into the city. That would have all been quite familiar to the people of Jerusalem and other conquered people of the Roman Empire, as that sort of action was a reflection of how a conquering general would have led a triumphal procession into a subdued city, but riding in on a chariot with soldiers, captured enemies dragged underfoot, the power of the empire on display. And in another brilliant but tragic piece of irony, the prisoner, the priests say they really want free is Barabbas. Barabbas, which translated means son of the father. Son of the father. Sounds a bit familiar. And this Barabbas, this son of the father, was imprisoned for murder, rebellion, and insurrection in rising up against the Romans. This Barabbas was the tough guy, the hero that some people, many people, wanted Jesus to be. That's the kind of Messiah we may like when things aren't going our way. So it is right that we reflect on the tragedy, the irony, evil, the injustice, and all of that. The Passion of Christ is a study in the human condition, and we need to hear it. And I hope that hearing it, we are moved to a place of saying, for his sake, for Jesus' sake, to the best of my ability, I will not be a part of anything that is vindictive, unjust, evil. At the end of the day, those things have no future in God's plan anyway. Because even having heard all of this today, we actually know the end of the story. The king does conquer. Death is the enemy which is vanquished. The king becomes a living reminder that when people have done their worst, God is still God. And the tenor of God's intent towards us is known in the shape of Jesus, his love. And that is good news. This week, we walk with Jesus on a deep journey, the deepest of journeys. Pray that in doing so, we gain fresh insight into what it means to be a member of Christ's body and are able to declare with conviction that you too have seen the Lord.